Welcome back, everyone, and Happy New Year. The final ever episode of Stranger Things has just been released, and there's a lot to unpack here. This will be my complete breakdown of the Season 5 finale. There were so many big moments, hidden Easter eggs, and callbacks to the very first episode. Just to let you know, this video will contain major spoilers, so if you haven't watched yet, come back after you do. The episode was called The Rightside Up, which is a reference to the normal world where the characters live. It's kind of funny because when you think about it, the way the dimensions are shown, the normal world is actually on the bottom and the upside down is on top. So technically, the regular world is more like the upside down. But upside down and right side up are just based on your perspective, which actually plays into the whole theme of Vecna versus the kids and the Mind Flayer's perspective on which dimension is the right one. Let me start with the biggest reveal of the finale. We finally learned what was really going on with the Mind Flayer this whole time. The Mind Flayer was pulling the strings all along. It's been manipulating Vecna ever since young Henry Creel touched that magic stone. This confirms you needed to watch the Stranger Things first Shadow stage play to understand the full backstory. That's going to be a big criticism since most people couldn't see it, but at least they gave us a quick version. We learned what was in that briefcase and all the terrible things he did as a kid. All of it happened because the Mind Flayer was influencing him and Dr. Brenner was abusing him. He was attacked from both sides, so no wonder he turned out so messed up. Here's the big thing. The Mind Flayer gave Henry his powers when that black smoke entered his body. That's why you see it leaving the kids when they disconnect from the tubes. The flesh castle is the Mind Flayer's physical body, but its natural state is that cloud-like smoke that enters people and takes them over. The Mind Flayer kept Henry scared of the cave so he wouldn't remember the truth. Henry finally overcomes his fear and steps inside. I loved how they showed this through his perspective as he's finally remembering. The flesh castle that we saw is the real physical body of the Mind Flayer. When it turned into a giant spider, that was a callback to all those spider drawings young Henry made. He became obsessed with spiders because the Mind Flayer was influencing him even back then. The idea is that young Henry Creel was fundamentally a good kid, but he was being twisted and manipulated by the Mind Flayer to do all these horrible things. The Mind Flayer's true goal was to absorb the normal dimension, take it over, and consume everything. It's like a multiverse villain that just goes from dimension to dimension, consuming everything and then moving on to the next one. That's what the scientist was trying to warn young Henry about in the cave. Don't let it in or it will consume everything. This is the question everyone's asking. We were led to believe that 11 died, but then the Duffer Brothers did a huge cop-out and left it up to us to decide. Here's what happened. The group killed both Vecna and the Mind Flayer because they were connected through the hive mind. The Mind Flayer actually needed Henry and wasn't just using him. After defeating them, the group escaped and set off the bomb to destroy the Upside Down. When everyone made it back, 11 stayed in the Upside Down by the gateway. She wouldn't walk through because there would always be people like Dr. Brenner who would hunt her to create more numbers. So she stayed behind as the Upside Down was destroyed, making us think she died. But here's the twist. 18 months later, Mike tells a different story after playing Dungeons and Dragons. In his version, the mage, which represents 11, actually tricked everybody with Kaylee's powers. She made it look like she was taken out with the Upside Down, but in reality, Kaylee used her illusion powers and 11 escaped to find peace in some paradise far away. This connects back to what Hopper said about Mike having two different roads he could follow. One where he blamed himself for 11's death, or one where he accepted her choice and moved on. I think Mike the storyteller was just trying to give people different ways to find peace with what 11 did. The big surprise was that Kaylee didn't betray the group. She died a noble death, killed by the military while trying to save 11. But before she died, she cast one final illusion to make everyone think 11 sacrificed herself. This way, nobody would look for her, not even the military. 11 could finally live a normal life somewhere far away. At the end, we see 11 in what looks like a Nordic town in the far north, living her life peacefully. The question is, will she ever contact the group again? Will she reach out to Mike at some point? We don't know yet. In my opinion, the timeline suggests 11 survived. Kaylee was still alive long enough to cast the final illusion. The whole point of the show was that 11 found her paradise with the people she cared about. But maybe her real paradise is being free from all the danger and finally living a normal life. When it came to VECNA'S death, we finally saw why he couldn't step foot in the cave. The Mind Flayer was keeping him from going in there, but he forced himself into that specific memory where he was first exposed to the Mind Flayer. While Will was connected to Henry through the hive mind, stopping him from fighting 11, he tried to convince Henry that he was once like him. Just a vessel. But Henry said the Mind Flayer needed him. I don't think that's true. I think it just showed how weak Henry's mind was and that the Mind Flayer made him believe that. The lair where Vecna was hiding was the Mind Flayer's dormant shell. When it woke up, the group fought it in the abyss. Vecna was connected to it under the heart. While 11 fought him and Will interfered, Vecna got pierced by a spike in the Mind Flayer's core. Honestly, the Season 4 battles were better. Vecna was killed too easily and didn't show his true power. The Mind Flayer was also taken out too easily. I preferred when it was a shadowy entity instead of this physical creature. When it opened its mouth, it was terrifying, but I never felt they were in real danger. Joyce was the one who ultimately killed Vecna by telling him he picked on the wrong family. As she was beating him, we saw clips of all the terrible things he'd done. Once he was taken out and the heart of the Mind Flayer turned black, the reign of terror was over. Personally, I don't know if Joyce needed this moment. She was barely in the finale and got one of the biggest moments in the entire show. During the ending, we found out what happened to everyone. Hopper and Joyce got engaged and were moving away. Will found a place where he could be himself. It looks like he finds a boyfriend. Mike became a writer, basically turning into their version of Stephen King, writing books based on their adventures. He leaves out details about 11 to protect her. Dustin gave the graduation speech and referenced Dungeons & Dragons, calling back to Eddie and the Hellfire Club. His speech compared their adventures to D&D alignment, saying the chaos made them stronger. Lucas and Max ended up together. Steve became a baseball coach. Jonathan made films, and everyone agreed to work on his movies together. Nancy dropped out of college and became a reporter at the Herald. Robin worked at the radio station. They all agreed to meet monthly because their friendship was irreplaceable. The final Dungeons & Dragons game was a callback to episode 1. Mike is Dungeon Master again, just like at the start. When Hopper mentions Montauk, that's the original pitch name the Duffers gave to Netflix for Stranger Things. During Dustin's speech, Mike notices speaker feedback that sounds like military devices. This suggests 11 using her powers from far away to be there in spirit. The mage stepping out of the portal in their game represents 11 potentially returning in the future. I have mixed feelings about this finale. The episode felt choppy. The CGI looked poor in some scenes. Vecna and the Mind Flayer were wiped out too easily. Every battle in Season 4 was better. For character deaths, 11's was huge until they left it to interpretation. That felt weak. Kaylee's death didn't impact me much. They also teased Steve's death, but it didn't happen. That felt cheap too. There was too much story with only 2 hours. We spent so much time with Holly Wheeler and Will's powers, but they didn't matter much in the end. Holly was barely in the finale and Will didn't confront Vecna face to face. There were no real stakes even though the world was on the line. The danger wasn't there. The final 45 minutes dragged. It was set 18 months later with huge 1980s movie cliches. Some acting quality showed here too. But I loved the Hopper and 11 connection. I was excited when Henry went into the cave and the Mind Flayer revealed itself. The outcome was just disappointing. Overall, the show ended okay. Season 4 is easily the best season of the show. If they hadn't waited 3.5 years, we could have gotten a finale more in line with that season. Season 4 was dark and had the horror that made the show famous. Vecna felt terrifying back then. In Season 5, I wasn't frightened at all. There were no real stakes and I never felt like the main group wouldn't win. When it comes to how Stranger Things will be remembered, I think it will be remembered well. They didn't completely mess up the finale. They just didn't have enough time to execute the ending the story deserved. It almost needed an entire extra volume to expand on the abyss, the Mind Flayer's return, and the battle between Vecna and 11. Not just a quick 20 minutes. It was rushed, which is crazy to say for an episode that was 2 hours and 8 minutes long. They should have cut that 45-minute ending in my opinion. It's not easy to write an ending, as we've seen with many shows before. While not perfect, the ending to Stranger Things was just okay. What did you think of the ending? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.